Here is, I think, if it can be done, the best option, and that is seller financing. Why do I say that? Because if a seller has a property free and clear, you move them from landlord to bank. And basically, you are running your loan through the seller. And with that, you're not having to get any banks involved. You're not having to pull your credit. You can negotiate all the terms. So if you're wanting to seller finance, obviously the best, most ideal circumstance for you as the investor is 0% interest, right?
Yeah.
And the best down payment is $0 down. There are instances where that is possible, but with seller financing, you can negotiate those things. So, if the going rate, interest rates for, bank loans is 7%, if you can negotiate the right terms with a seller to maybe, get a loan for 4%,
Yeah.
and
Because it costs them nothing.
right.
And ideally, this is catered more towards like seller financing. Yeah, if they have it paid off. Also, seller financing helps when the people don't want to make any more money.
Correct.
Because either they sell that house for $100,000 and pay
Yep.
the taxes on it.
Yep.
And pay more taxes because of the bracket they're in.
Yep.
Or they only have to pay on that low. They only have to pay taxes on the low interest rate that they receive and the principal throughout the year.
Correct.
So that's a huge selling point too, on top of everything that you're saying right now.
And that's a huge selling point for the seller
Yeah.
of why they would want to do it. And then also, I think terms are more important than purchase price.
Yeah.
Blueprint listeners, welcome back for another episode with your host. I'm Zach Heyer.
I'm Spencer Maxwell. And today we're talking about something that we are passionate about. This is something that me and Zach have kind of always, gone back and forth with for a while now. We love real estate investing. So today we figure we'd break it down for you guys.
Yeah. So we kind of want to walk through the process of investing in real estate, in the steps of what that looks like. So first things first is, we get so many people that talk to us, but then also that I hear that are talking how I want to invest into real estate. I want to do this. I want to do that, but they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. So first things first is you've got to be able to find deals. If you can't find deals, you can't invest, right? And in today's market, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I get is, well, there aren't any good deals out there. Well, that's true.
It's harder to find deals.
It's harder. It's true if you don't put any effort into it.
Correct.
It's certainly harder to find good deals in this market, but it is certainly not impossible. So we're going to start off with a couple of the different ways to source deals. So first and foremost, one of the ways that a lot of people are familiar with is looking on market to find deals. There's several different places that you can look. One of them being the MLS, which is the multiple listing service. The only caveat with that is you have to have your real estate license, be a real estate agent, and or know a real estate agent and have their access to the MLS. So what is it? It's basically just a place where realtors and real estate agents post their listings, properties for sale. And the beautiful thing about the MLS, and Spencer, you can hit on this a little bit, is that a lot of people are using Zillow, they're using Redfin, they're using Realtor.com, which all are great tools, but they don't get the data as quickly, correct?
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah. The if you're signed up on auto emails on the MLS, it'll hit you a couple hours earlier, even up to like 24 hours earlier than it would to upload to Zillow, Realtor, Trulia, those sorts.
yeah, so that's one of the benefits.
Time is money, quite
Yep.
literally.
That's one of the benefits of using the MLS versus the other platforms. And if you don't have a real estate license, getting in contact with an agent to get you plugged in to the MLS. But if that doesn't work, that's totally okay. You can also use Zillow, you can use Redfin, you can use Trulia, etc. Those, work just as well in terms of being able to analyze a deal. So the only thing is with on-market deals, it's an absolute volume game. So you're going to need to target high day on market properties, motivated sellers. And high days on market is one of the ways that you can, diagnose or find motivated sellers.
Mm-hmm.
The catch with this is that I'm just going to use simple numbers. If you have 10 properties that you find that have high days on market that you want to go look at, you're probably going to have to offer on 10 of them, but of the 10, probably 8 of them are going to tell you to go pound sand.
Yep.
Because it's likely that what they're asking versus where your numbers kick out are going to be not in alignment. You're probably going to be coming in a little bit lower. And on 8 out of the 10 of those offers, you're probably going to have 8 of them tell you to go pound sand. Of the 10, 2 of them are probably going to possibly entertain it. And then you might get one deal from those 10 offers. And I'm just using hypothetical numbers here. So just understand that finding on market deals, you're going to have to put in a lot of work. You can't just offer on a couple properties, analyze, underwrite, and say, hey, this one's listed for 300. I can only offer, 195. I'm not going to offer. Now that's pretty uncomfortable, but you're going to need to just offer on as many properties as you possibly can in order to, find deals using this channel. So understanding if you go on market, it's possible to find deals. It's just a volume play. You're going to need to do a lot of work in order to actually get those deals to where you need them and where you need the economics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so moving on to the next, which is my favorite as far as how to find deals, is building relationships with realtors, sellers, and wholesalers. And this has paid dividends for me because now, granted, I'm full-time in real estate. It's tough to do this part-time, but being able to build relationships with realtors who list a lot of investment properties or have some themselves or trust you to bring a buyer or to be the buyer yourself. I've had realtors bring me package deals of investment properties, flips, whatever. And then there's just enough people out there that I know that no ideal and distressed properties will pass me a lead every once in a while. And I like that because it's a warm lead. A lot of the times they don't want to go on market. They trust you and they're relying on you to follow through. So that's my personal favorite. But I think that's the most lucrative. However, that takes time.
It does take time, but that's going to absolutely work to your benefit, and you have to look at it from the long-term perspective, playing the long game, right? Because if you can seek out, be intentional about building and creating those relationships, that's going to continuously serve you in the future while you're doing some of these other methods that can continue to fill that pipeline.
Especially if you're able to follow through and you're able to be trusted.
Yep.
So,
which that's a key point. So one of the ways that you can get involved in start building these relationships is if you live in a decent sized city. A lot of these cities do have what's called real estate investor networking groups. Honestly, you can find them on Facebook, Facebook groups. That's actually, sorry, tangent, but that's another fantastic way to find deals, build relationships. Because there's wholesalers, there's realtors, there's direct to sellers, listing and just talking about real estate. That's the whole focus of the group. So that's a great way. But you can find on Facebook your local real estate investment group, REI groups. And then from there, it's on you to take the action, go attend their gatherings. Gosh, that sounds like I'm 1910. Go attend their gatherings.
Luncheons.
Yeah. But when they're having meetings, go network, start talking to people. And I'm not going to promise you, but I can assure you that you're going to link up with some people interested in helping in the real estate journey.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to build the relationships that Spencer was just talking about with, agents, wholesalers, etc.
Yeah. And then we also have mailing letters, like postcard mailers, those little ones saying, call us, we buy houses, whatever. That is one route. I've personally had success with handwritten letters. I'm 2 for 2. Hand wrote 2 letters for 2 duplex, and they both wanted to sell. I ended up buying one of them. The other one just didn't work out. But yeah, handwritten letters are another way. It makes it more relatable,
Totally
more raw. People would rather sell to a person than a corporate typed out, we buy houses, dial this 1-800 number. So kind of thing, especially if you're real local to the property that you're buying. People like to see it stay locally, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then one last one is
driving for dollars. Yep. But there's one thing that I do want to say specifically on the mailing letters is, once again, I think people don't understand the volume that it takes to be successful in this. And, they might send out 300 or 400 letters, for a month, 2 months, not really seeing results, and be like, this strategy doesn't work. It's not for me, just can't get it done. Well, the reality is that you're not doing nearly enough for nearly long enough, so in order for some of this stuff to take traction and get going, you've almost got to have the kahunas to continuously be spending the money on the mailers, at a clip that is going to be beneficial for long enough, and continue that spending, realizing and understanding that eventually it's going to start hitting.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and mailers aren't too crazy expensive.
They're not.
Especially when you think about the return you'll get off just if one converts.
That's true. But the volume that you do,
you're going to have to do volume.
At first, it can be very intimidating while you're trying to get started.
Yeah.
So just putting that out there. But then the last one, Spence, driving for dollars.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain what driving for dollars is?
Yeah, driving for dollars is hitting your local neighborhood and trying to see if there's any dilapidated properties or deferred maintenance or neglection going on with some properties. Because what does that tell you? That tells you that a seller really doesn't, or an owner doesn't really care anymore. They're not too invested. They're not keeping up too much on it, or they don't have the funds and they probably would like to sell.
Yeah.
So that's what that tells us. And that's just getting out in your local community, taking an hour, driving around, writing down some addresses, mailing letters, and cold calling.
Yep, absolutely. And then in some specific examples to see if a property is kind of up for the opportunity to sell, or an owner is willing to sell, is one of the things that you can look for is knee-high grass, overgrown grass. That's a big thing. Looking at the condition of the exterior of the property. Is it really just run down and not taken care of? Is it sitting vacant? Right? Those are signs of the property possibly sitting vacant. And if it's vacant, then that property's not making any money if it's an investor that owns it. So, from that point, just doing the due diligence to track down the owner and give them a call. And you can leverage those things,
Yeah.
to
It'll scream at you when you see it,
Mhm.
especially deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
That it'll scream at you like,
think
hey,
so.
I want to sell.
Yep.
Most of the time.
Cool. So, needless to say, there are multiple ways to go find deals. You just need to be willing to put in the work.
Yep.
So next, we kind of want to get to in the different investment strategies that you can hit. Now, before we get into some of this stuff, this in no way, shape, or form is financial advice.
Oh, yeah.
It's not it's not financial advice. Spencer and I are just strictly talking about what we've done, what has worked for us. And if you feel convicted to try it as well, by all means, go for it. But it is not, we're not telling you this is what you should do.
Yeah.
It's not financial advice. So just want to make that disclaimer.
Yeah. Quick disclaimer.
Yeah. Business owners, do you know the value of creating a strong brand and realize social media is one of the best ways to do it, but don't have the time to stay consistent or know where to start? Do you need a modern website or an eye-catching logo? You only get one first impression and you've got to make it count. No matter if you're looking for a website, a logo package, or if you need a professional to craft and implement a custom social media strategy to create a recognizable brand and drive sales, the Z&T agency has got you covered. Odds are you've probably been thinking about these things to some degree, but didn't know a solution. Or maybe this is all new to you and you're interested in hearing more. Either way, we'd love to talk to you. Reach out to zach.hire@theztagency.com to book your consultation call today.
So where do we go from there? You find a deal, and then Zach, it is all right. So there's 3 boxes sitting in front of you. You have this house. You got a hold of a seller.
Mm-hmm.
You have this house.
Yep.
There's 3 different avenues you can take.
Yep.
The best route we believe to take is to evaluate each option, and the first of those options is wholesaling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So exactly what Spencer was saying. Running it through the 3 different options of what works best for this property.
Yeah.
For wholesaling specifically, what is wholesaling? I think that this is a fantastic way to start. If you don't have much experience, if you don't have the money to get into maybe the flips or the rentals, it's a great way to basically generate some cash. So what is wholesaling? How does it work? Basically, in the simplest form, you are essentially going out and finding deals using some of the avenues that we just mentioned, finding deals and connecting a property with a seller and a buyer. And basically you're just matchmaking.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is at the simplest form. So, using simple numbers, I find a deal, I call an owner, I convince them to sell the property to me. I lock it up with the seller for $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realize, hey, I don't have the money or the resources to actually close on this deal or flip it or buy and hold. But I know that there are people out there who do, right? So I am going to go out in search of an investor. And when I find them, I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Investor, I have this property for $110,000. Now, you want to do your due diligence to understand what that investor's looking for based on their exit strategy. If they're fixing and flipping,
Typically flippers, yeah.
Yep, fixing and flipping. I want to understand what they need in terms of a purchase price or enough of a spread for this to make sense. So I'm going to do that due diligence ahead of time as well before I bring the deal to them. But I'm going to go and I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Investor, Mrs. Investor, I have this property for $110,000. So I'm going to, I've already got the property locked up with the seller. Now I am going to basically assign that contract to the end buyer. So basically all that is doing is assigning the rights from the original purchase and sale agreement to the end buyer.
Yeah.
And they're basically assuming the rights to purchase and close on that property. So I get it locked up with the seller with a purchase and sale agreement. I then use a separate assignment contract for an investor. And then once both of those are executed, they're signed, I send those to the title company. My work is done. If they agree, I get cut a check for $10,000.
Yep.
And that's all I have to do.
It's
So
your assignment fee.
that is your assignment
If you're assigning a contract, and it's just called an assignment fee.
Yep.
Yep.
So that is wholesaling. In the simplest form, you are just basically matching sellers and buyers.
You're creating a win-win scenario.
You are.
You're giving the seller what they want. You're giving the buyer a good price to where they can still have a margin.
Correct. So it is a great way. And here's one thing to note. You do not need a real estate license to wholesale. So it doesn't matter if you just do the due diligence, you learn how to do it. There are plenty of resources on the internet. Bigger Pockets, that's a great source. YouTube, just, Google search how to wholesale. And, you can start doing that today. It's a great way to get your foot in the door in terms of investment real estate. It's a great way to generate cash because you don't need any of your own money. You don't need any of your own credit. You don't even have to close on the
you
property.
Don't need a license or any money.
You need nothing. You just need the sweat equity.
You just need the network
to go find the deals and then go find the investors.
Yep.
That's a great place to start. So that's wholesaling.
Yeah.
Next, of the three buckets that you want to run a deal through is flipping. Spencer, go ahead and talk about kind of the flipping method.
Yeah. And so typically, the most basic formula that we would say to get started, because if you're looking at getting your first flip, you might want to be systematic with your first one. Now that we do it, or I do it, it's really just kind of like, hey, if the spread looks good, it looks good.
Yeah.
But there is an equation that you could use to play it conservative. And what that would be is you would take your ARV, your after repair value. You would find that either one, if you're a realtor, two, hitting up your realtor and saying, hey, how much would this sell for after we get it all done? So if it would sell for $200,000, then that's your ARV. 200K is your ARV. You would take, so typically you want to work these backwards in reverse. So you want to take 75% of that. That 25% in between is your profit margin. And plus there's going to be some holding costs in there. There's going to be some holding costs. There's going to be realtor fees and maybe closing costs or post-inspection repairs, what have you. So you're leaving that 25% for insurance. And then you're going to take after repair value, you're going to subtract 75%, or you're going to take 75% of the 200K, the ARV, and then you're going to subtract repairs from that. So, and then that gives you your purchase price.
Yeah.
Sorry, I made that kind of confusing, but I was kind of all over the place.
We'll just do for simple numbers. Your ARV is $100,000.
Yep.
You take 75% of your $100,000. That's $75,000, right?
Yep.
Now you're going to take that 75 and you're going to subtract your
Say it needs $25,000.
25 grand, that means that you need to get that property for 50 grand.
50 grand. Yeah.
Right.
There. I should have done 100,000. So there you go.
And now also, this could be changing dependent on your market. I know that there are some markets where in order for you to be competitive and get a deal, you need to be at like 80% ARV.
Yeah.
Right?
The margins are getting thinner and thinner with today's market.
Right. But the lower the percentage of ARV that you can get, so 75%, if you can get it for 70%, et cetera, one, that's just showing your negotiations and your ability to negotiate. But two, understanding that percentage off of ARV that you can get, the more that you can get, the more that it insulates you from mistakes. So if, repair costs, we have marked as 25 grand, but you get into a deal and now they're 30 grand, if you didn't underwrite the deal correctly, you might start really getting tight margins, right? Or heaven forbid, something happens in the market and the market turns a little bit. If you didn't buy correctly, you might be getting caught with your pants down and upside down on the property in the red. But if you insulate yourself well enough, even in recessions, things of that sort, you bought it at enough of a discount that you're kind of insulated, right? Yeah. So making sure that you are absolutely needled with the economics and understanding what the max that I can purchase is hugely important, because if you do not get this step right, you can lose a lot of money.
Sure can.
If you don't make sure that you are extremely dialed in on the numbers.
And you got to be well networked on flips too. You got to have guys that'll do work for you, spit you out quick quotes and turn it quick, because your time is money. Those holding costs can get expensive. So find somebody who can turn that thing in like 2 months.
Well, what are holding costs, Spencer? What do you mean by holding costs?
If you're one, it's your electric bill, your gas bill, your water bill. It is
debt.
If you leverage debt, it's going to be the debt on the property, right? You're going to have to pay a monthly mortgage. So it's that stuff that your holding costs.
Right.
And then your closing costs are realtor fees, title fees, potential paying closing costs for the buyer, post-inspection repair, stuff like that. So that's also why you want to leave that 25% in there and play conservative on your first one. If it doesn't fit the formula, it doesn't fit the formula.
So I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think in terms of doing the work yourself or getting a contractor to do the work? What do you think is the best way to go?
Well, that's a loaded question, because if you could do the work yourself, I'd say do the work yourself.
You think so?
Save money, because it's all about saving money.
But you just said time is money, and it's probably going to take you a lot longer.
Well, shoot, if I was a GC, yeah, but no, because I know GCs, I don't have to do anything myself. So yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm of the belief that with flips specifically, because time is money in your holding costs, and the longer that you are working on something, the more that you're racking up, and that's eating into your spread.
Yeah,
right?
I would just say that question it depends on who you are. If you're if you're the guys that I know and you got the money to do it, heck yeah, go do it.
Right.
Me, I'm not doing it because it would take me forever.
It would take you forever, and also if you have the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because in my outlook, and feel free to agree or disagree. I mean, you flipped more than I have. So if you have contractors doing it, you can also do more volume.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because they get it done a lot quicker, and you can do multiple deals in the time that you did one deal. So let's say that you save a little bit of money doing it yourself on one deal. You make an extra 10, 15 grand, but you could have had 2 or 3 deals in the time that you did one. And in totality, you could have made, 40 grand.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So definitely build those relationships with those contractors. Find a good one that can turn and burn. I mean, really on a in-depth rehab, I mean, really a GC should be through that in like 2 months,
Totally.
you know,
Depending on the scope of the work.
depending on the scope of the work. I mean, if you're just, yeah. Anyway, we could get
Yeah.
super specific with that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yep. Okay. So is that good for flips? Is there any more that you want to say on
we've
that?
talked about wholesales. We've talked about flips. The third bucket is buy and hold. Zach.
Buy and hold. So one of the metrics that we look for in buy and holds, and I'm kind of talking numbers here a little bit, is, I mean, this is a very, very common one, the 1% rule. What's the 1% rule? You want your rents to be 1% of the purchase price.
Mhm.
So back to simple numbers once again. $100,000 purchase price, you want your property to rent for $1,000 a month. That's, in simplest terms, one thing to look for.
That's the beginner rule.
Yeah, that's the beginner rule. Another thing is getting a little bit more in depth on the economics is we want to look on our cash on cash return, right? And that's basically how long it's taking for you to recoup your investment. So how do you find cash on cash return? You're basically just going to take your monthly cash flow. So if, once again, simple numbers, if your cash flow is $1,000 a month,
Mhm.
you're going to take your monthly cash flow, you're going to times it by 12 for the year. That's $12,000 of annual cash flow. And you're going to divide that by the purchase price. So, 12 grand divided by 100. And then that's going to kick you out a percentage. And in that percentage, it's going to tell you that's cash on cash returns is displayed as a percentage. So I think, in Spencer, let me know your thoughts on this. Because I know that there's different objectives and people have different standards of what they're looking for out of a deal. What do you think on average a good cash on cash return would be?
Are you looking to buy, sell, or invest? Be sure to use a Maxwell Group at NavX Realty, where your dream is our passion. The Maxwell Group takes pride in client relationships and experiences. We utilize our knowledge, our love for the industry, and our extensive network to handle your life's biggest investment. Call or text Spencer Maxwell at 937-572-5382. Well, we had a conversation about this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And the average human would want to shoot for something that the stock market might give them.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe like 8%. In the height of the market, I saw duplexes and quadplexes being sold at a 7% return. But we learned that real estate is illiquid.
It is.
So typically you want a little bit more for your money.
Mm-hmm. You want a premium return.
You want a premium return for an illiquid asset. So what would we say? I would say probably 12%.
I would say 12 to 15.
12 to 15% return. I will tell you, like in the height of the market, that was tough to get because everybody's jacking the prices up, trying to take advantage of that.
That's assuming that you go on market.
That's assuming that you go on market. If you can find something with a 12% return, I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, the higher the percentage, the better it is in your terms. So I would say, just once again, not financial advice, just kind of where you look at. If you're anywhere from the 12 to 15% range, pretty decent. Anything above that, I think you're doing pretty well.
Oh, that's premium. Yeah. I mean, 12 to 15%. One, I think you're beating the market.
Yep.
Two, what? You go put in a savings account, a money market account, and make 4.5%.
Maybe.
So like you're making 12% year over year. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. So that is some of the economics of what you're looking for in terms of a buy and hold. I guess let's backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sometimes it's hard to because we have done it to kind of break it down. So what is a buy and hold?
Yeah. A buy and hold is basically like, hey, I buy this property to hold it as a rental long term.
It's a rental. It's
Yeah.
basically a rental.
It's basically a rental.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's what it is. So if you're looking to build a portfolio of rental properties, this is some of the strategy that goes into that.
Yeah. So if the house that you source the deal, right? It doesn't fit the wholesale, it doesn't fit, well, it could fit all three. But if it makes the most sense, if you're getting it at a discount, maybe put very little money into it, it's in a great rental market, right? Where rents are high and you got it for cheap. That's probably when it would make sense to buy and hold.
Yeah. And I think that there are a couple different metrics that you look for, or different approaches that investors take. There is a cash flow approach. They're basically seeking out maximum cash flow on the property. And that's basically saying cash flow is after you've paid your mortgage, property taxes, insurance, etc. After you've paid all of your expenses, the money that's left over is cash flow.
Yeah.
So there are investors that look for cash flow specific, and there are investors that look for appreciation specific. So there are different markets that obtain different goals. So if you are looking for a property in Dayton, Ohio, for example, depending on where, but you're probably going to be much more of a cash flow market than an appreciation market. Now, if you have a rental in Las Vegas, Nevada, or you have a rental in Southern California, that's probably not going to be a cash flow market. It's going to be an appreciation market, right? Because the real estate there continuously appreciates at a much higher clip than the real estate in Dayton, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
So there's different approaches that you may be looking for to determine, and even on the economics, I guess, a little bit, to determine what you're looking for. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. And so what should you be like when you're calculating your return to see if it makes sense for a buy and hold, aka rental? What are some of the things that we should be including in our calculations? All right. So we need to talk about expenses, maintenance per door. Find out a budget, and this could vary per property. You could have an old 1915 built property that might require a little bit more maintenance. Are you putting $100 back per door? Right. So if it's a duplex, $200 a month you're putting back.
Thinking with the end in mind.
Right. If it's a duplex built in 2000 on a slab, you're probably not going to have a lot of maintenance. Right. So maybe put $50 back per door, but we do recommend putting maintenance back per door. For instance, on our duplex, we put $50 back per door.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes you don't get called, but in 6 months you might get called for a water heater that's going to cost you $1,200.
Yep.
And then what else do you calculate for? You calculate for vacancies. And why? So why 5% on vacancy?
Yeah. So 5% because, well, first of all, if you are rented at 100% occupancy, shows you a couple things. One, it shows you that you are not priced correctly.
Yeah.
It shows that you are priced too low and that there's rent increases on the table to increase your revenue.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Two, the bank will not loan at 100% occupancy. So you can't get debt on that. They will only loan at 95%. Or I should say they won't.
They'll calculate.
They max out at 95%.
Yeah.
So that is a good reason why we calculate for 5% rather than, just assuming that the property is going to be 100% occupied.
Yeah, you always want to assume worst case scenario. So calculate for vacancies, calculate for your maintenance. If you bought the house in cash, you will have to pay the taxes yourself and insurance. If not, that's going to be escrowed on top of your mortgage.
Yep.
And then also too, this is stuff that people don't think about. Software. I mean, we kept a Google spreadsheet for a little bit, but also you don't just want to, you want to be professional with it. You want to use a good rental database software, and there's plenty out there, ranging from $5 a month to $500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So calculate that to maybe do some demos and see what it is that you're trying to spend. So there's the software aspect on things too.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, and then I mean those are numbers when calculating for the buy and holds. That's if the numbers look good from there, then buy and hold must be your best option.
Yeah,
So
and here's one thing that I do want to make a point on is so many times people look at buy and holds and they hear about, hey, I want passive income and I just want to build a real estate portfolio and be able to just sit back and get passive income. Well, when they're doing this, they're looking at how can I get into a deal? Oh, I need to put 20% down. I need to do whatever. They're looking at that perspective, but they don't realize, or not that they don't realize, but they look over the fact that getting into the property is just the first part. You also have to have enough money for maintenance and repairs.
yeah,
Because if you use all your money to get into the deal, but then, 6 months later, the tenant calls and says, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened. Let's say the HVAC goes out
yeah,
or whatever it may be. If you don't have the money to make those repairs, you're SOL. So looking at it from a perspective of it's more than just having them. And I know that this is just insanely simple, but looking at it from the perspective of I need to not just have enough money to get into the deal, I need to have enough money to comfortably be able to afford any maintenance requests or repairs that come up as well.
yeah.
And it's not going to be a detriment to my financial situation.
Set up a fund for the property if you can.
Yes. Yes. So that is very important to consider if you're looking at the buy and hold.
You have to think about that going into it.
You do.
You have to. You got to think, hey, in 5 years, what if I need a new roof?
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's a good point to bring up because not everybody thinks about that. They look at the shiny object.
Exactly. They look at the passive income. But here's one thing that I do want to talk about on the buy and hold side of what's called a 1031 exchange. And that's basically just written in the tax code that allows you to defer taxes on the sale of a property if you roll that over into another like asset. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you do want to 1031 exchange, you have to identify the property within like 45 days.
45 days.
And then you need to close it
within the next 180.
Yep. So those are two big things. But why do I say this? Because I'm of the belief, Spencer, feel free to agree or disagree. Listeners, feel free to agree or disagree. But I have the approach of if I'm building a rental portfolio and I'm buying long-term buy and hold assets, I am going to continuously be improving the quality of the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are sitting there and saying, hey, I buy this property today. I'm never selling it. I'm just going to wait till it's paid off in 30 years and I'm just never selling it. For me, I kind of have a different approach of I'm going to do that, but as I see better opportunities, as I see better assets come available in deals, I want to take advantage of that. So if that means selling some of my lower performing or not as good assets for better assets, I'm going to do that because it's continuously improving the quality of the portfolio. And I'm going to utilize the 1031 exchange to be able to do that and defer the taxes so that way I'm not getting hit with a tax bill on the sale of a property.
We sold, Steph had a property on the east side of Dayton, bought it for 63 before the market went crazy, sold it for 90 something, and was able to take the proceeds from the sale as a down payment on the duplex 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Just took the proceeds from that, didn't have to pay capital gains tax, and then now bought a duplex that is making double the return as the single family did.
Boom.
So, and then in a couple of years, take the duplex, get a quadplex,
Yep.
And just keep upgrading and snowballing. So it's definitely a good route. So while we stay on that topic, that's a great way to continue to roll over, but to kind of backpedal as far as financing goes. If you don't have money to get into real estate investing, that's okay.
Yeah. You don't have to have all the cash.
There's different avenues, right? There are different avenues if you do have the money. There are the traditional financing route where you do have to put 20% down on an investment property if it's a single family home. If it's 2 or more units, then you need 25%. And just don't take 25% in there. You're also going to have closing costs. And to piggyback off that, you can only get 2% of your closing costs covered on an investment property. Banks want to see that you have money and that you have reserves.
Mm-hmm.
So for traditional financing, you're going to need 25% down on 2 or more units. And then you're going to have probably, it varies per price point, but probably 3%, 2 to 3% of that purchase price will be in closing costs. And you can only get so much of that covered.
Right.
And then you have to have a couple months of reserves as well in the bank.
And the thing
going into that.
And the thing with this is, because this is not your primary residence, you don't get some of the opportunities as if it was. So for example, you don't get, the option for your 3.5% FHA. You don't get the opportunity for your 3% conventional because it's not your primary residence, right? It's because it's an investment property.
Now, however, you can house hack. That I would say if you want to get into the buy and hold game, you need to bite the bullet and house hack. If Steph and I didn't have kids, we would be living in that duplex.
I'm
telling you right now, because you could put 3.5% down and live in up to 5 units. I think it is. You could do that.
Yeah. So what's house hacking? Right.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, because I don't want to just assume anything. So house hacking is basically where you get into a property and you live in it as your primary residence.
Yeah.
Right. But your intention is, well, I'm not going to tell you what your intention is, but you get into a property, you're living there, you decide that you want to sell it. Right.
Yeah.
So basically what you were able to do is, because you closed on it with the intention, you have to have the intention and you have to live there. There's no specific
for a year.
Is it?
FHA, if you buy a house, if like the duplex, if we bought that, we would have to live there for 1 year.
1 year. Okay.
Same with VA.
Yep. Okay. So you have to live there for a year. And then from that point, if you decide that you want to move out and move into a different house, you can leverage your 3.5% down for an FHA or your 3% down for a conventional that you did to get into that property. Now, after a year, you go and you do the exact same thing and you get another property, but you keep the one that you were originally in.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of house hacking. And that's how you can kind of start to build by those lower down payments.
You can only have one FHA loan at a time. So you would have to refinance out of the FHA into a conventional, but then that is a great way to do it. House hacking, if you ask any real estate, well, I can't speak for others, but if you ask most real estate investors, they would say, where do you want to get started in the buy and hold game? Buy a duplex and live in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea.
Yep.
So, but outside of that one exception, you will have to do traditional financing, the 20 to 25% down.
Correct.
And then also, and I'll talk about the DSCR too, the debt service coverage ratio loan. That's where you put 20% down as well. The good thing about DSCRs are they're investor friendly and they don't ask for a lot of the income requirements. They care more about, do you have a good credit score? And does the asset make money is really kind of their big things. There's some other things in there too. And that's 20% down as well. So,
but their focus is more on the deal versus you personally.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's a lot of pain with a conventional loan with the bank as far as like W-2s, incomes, tax returns, stuff like that. DSCR has a lot, I'm not going to say less underwriting, but it's definitely less in depth, I should say.
Mhm.
And that's 20% down. So that's a really good product too. And if you're an experienced investor, that could be a really good product for you as
Mhm.
well. And then there's two other financing options that we have up here too.
Yeah, well, we'll just I don't want to lump it in, but similarly to the DSCR, there's hard money loans.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be a similar focus to where they're lending more on the deal versus you personally. Now,
Yeah.
the caveat to hard money loans is it's going to be a much higher percentage of interest rate. So you're looking anywhere from like probably 12 to 15, maybe as high as like
Yeah. Yeah.
18%
On the high end.
for hard money loans. This is a great option if you're looking to fix and flip because they can be short-term loans that are paid off when you sell the property.
Yeah. A couple months.
So hard money is a great option specifically. I don't want to say specifically, but a great option for fixing and flipping because it is the high interest rate and it is looking at the deal specifically in short term. You can get in, you can, that's a part of your carrying costs or your holding costs that we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, the high
Yeah.
percentage of interest rate. But then at the sell of the property, you can get that paid off. So that's another great option. But here is, I think, if it can be done, the best option, and that is seller financing. Why do I say that? Because if a seller has a property free and clear, you move them from landlord to bank. And basically, you are running your loan through the seller. And with that, you're not having to get any banks involved. You're not having to pull your credit. You can negotiate all the terms. So if you're wanting to seller finance, obviously the best, most ideal circumstance for you as the investor is 0% interest, right?
Yeah.
And the best down payment is $0 down. There are instances where that is possible, but with seller financing, you can negotiate those things. So, if the going rate, interest rates for, bank loans is 7%, if you can negotiate the right terms with a seller to maybe, get a loan for 4%,
Yeah.
and
Because it costs them nothing.
right.
And ideally, this is catered more towards like seller financing. Yeah, if they have it paid off. Also, seller financing helps when the people don't want to make any more money
Correct.
because either they sell that house for $100,000 and pay
Yep.
the taxes on it
Yep.
and pay more taxes because of the bracket they're in,
Yep.
or they only have to pay on that low. They only have to pay taxes on the low interest rate that they receive and the principal throughout the year.
Correct.
So that's a huge selling point too, on top of everything that you're saying right now.
And that's a huge selling point for the seller
Yeah.
of why they would want to do it. And then also, I think terms are more important than purchase price.
Yeah.
So for me, let's say that we'll go back to the simple numbers. Let's say that a seller wants to sell a property for $100,000, right? And you are running your numbers and with traditional financing, et cetera, and maybe you can only pay 90,000 or 95,000. Well, with seller financing, you may even be able to go to them and say, hey, I'm willing to give you $110,000 if you give me a 3.5% interest rate, a 4% interest rate,
Yeah.
and $2,000 down versus 20,000 down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it also makes sense for the seller because in the long run, they're getting $10,000 more on the purchase than what they were even asking for. And that's just going to really help you in terms of getting into the deal because you know that I can pay more because I'm going to be paying significantly less in interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that seller financing is a great way. Just here's one thing to note is that you're probably going to eventually have a balloon payment
Yeah.
of, let's say that, we're 100 grand and we're at a 4% interest rate, 2 grand down, and then I'm paying however much a month. You can also negotiate the duration of the loan, right?
Yeah. 3, 5 years, whatever.
It can be 15.
Yeah. It could be longer
Honestly,
depending on what the seller wants.
the longer the loan, the more in favor it is for you as well. But if you can negotiate that down, and let's say that, after, uh, you know, 5 years, you wouldn't have paid that off by just your rents.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a balloon payment at the end of basically just the remainder of the balance that's due. You're going to have that. But the beautiful thing about that is that you can either make the decision that you pay the balloon and you keep the property and you're good to go and you own it free and clear. Or if you don't have the money to make the balloon payment and you know that that's coming up, you can sell the property, right? And then roll it over into different properties. So there's just so much creativity that comes from the seller financing piece. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to use, your credit. You don't have to get a bank involved, none of that. And you can negotiate on terms that works best for you and the seller. So if you can get into a deal where seller financing may be an option, that's probably going to be your best bet.
Yeah. I just think it gives you a lot more leverage.
It does.
A lot more leverage for a lot more cash flow, more return, stuff like that. So you just got to learn how to negotiate that and find the right situation for the right person.
Yep.
So to recap, you got to analyze deals and you got to source deals, and then you got to put them in the right buckets. Is it a wholesale? Is it a flip? Is it a buy and hold?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're calculating buy and holds, you need to get needled and specific, just like you do for flips.
Yep.
So yeah, and then there's also the different types of financing. So there's some layers to it, but that's just kind of the 30,000-foot view of kind of real estate investing in a nutshell. And as always, we always give you a little bit of scripture to finish on. And Zach, what do we got today?
Sure thing. So another verse coming at you from Proverbs.
Oh, we love Proverbs.
Proverbs 22, verse 29. Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of a low rank.
I love it. Be diligent.
Absolutely.
And you'll reap the reward.
Absolutely. So once again, this is not financial advice. This is just what we have done and what has worked for us.
And we're still learning.
We're still learning. We're still growing. So take that as you will. But hopefully that this provided a little bit of value to you all that are looking to possibly get into real estate. Honestly, if you're wanting to get into real estate, there's no excuse for why you cannot and why you don't take that first step, because worst case scenario, get started in wholesaling, right? And just putting in a little bit of sweat equity. And then also, there's different ways to get into deals. You got to get creative.
If you have questions, reach out.
Yeah. So hopefully you found some value. If you did find some value, once again, asking if you would just leave us a review, that would be extremely appreciated. Once again, it just kind of helps the podcast grow, expand to different people, and have, some more ears and eyeballs on the pod. So also feel free to like and subscribe. And that is all we have for this week on the Blueprint Podcast. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.
Peace.